Welcome to Andy and Ari on 3. The gift that keeps on giving, my trip down to Orlando to play the video game, because we also got to talk to Cade Klubnik, the Clemson quarterback there, because he's obviously on the bigger deluxe edition cover, but they made him really good in the game, Ari. Really good.
As they should have, yeah. Quarterback Central. I always love the off-season discussion about the video game, because it also paints the light of what team are you most excited to play with and why, and then that also kind of has a double meaning of what teams are you most excited to watch. I think those two kind of go hand in hand a little bit, right? Not always, but most of the time. And the expectations for Cade Klubnik this year is pretty high, and I've been banging the drum on this show, Andy, saying that 20-1 to win the national title for them is way too good odds to pass on, and I fully expect Clemson to make the playoff and give you a chance to at least hedge or cash a pretty fat bet there, and I'm banking a lot on his growth.
Well, and that's the thing. If he has a big year and they are in the national title hunt, then you got a good chance of Cade Klubnik being in New York. Or I don't even know if Heisman finalists will go to New York if they have a playoff game the next week at this point, but it certainly is an interesting possibility for him. And so getting to talk to him last week, and we didn't actually get to talk to him much about the video game. We talked to him more about the football season that's coming and what he's been doing to prepare for it. And I found it really interesting. Let's start out, because he talked about who he's modeling his game after. And there's one name that's oh, sure, obviously. There's another one that you're like, ooh, that's a deep cut, but I'm very intrigued. Here's Cade Klubnik.
Oh, man. I don't know. I don't think I've ever really tried to play like anybody, I guess. I definitely look up to guys. Like this summer, I'm studying Joe Burrow. So every summer I normally study a college player, either current or past, really normally past, and then a current NFL guy. So last year I studied senior year of Bailey Zappi, because he had a great year. I mean, when I wanted to improve my presence in the pocket, anticipation, and just delivery. So I studied him, and I studied just calmness and coolness of Patrick Mahomes in the pocket. So I studied those two guys because that was something I want to get better at. And then this year I'm studying last season for Joe, which is one of the best seasons ever for a quarterback. And then 2019 Joe. So he's just elite, and I love watching him play. Yeah.
What specifically, you mentioned the pocket presence that you wanted to learn from Mahomes. What specifically are you looking for in Joe's game that you want to kind of adopt or understand better?
Yeah. I would say from 2019, to be a little more specific, for 2019, just their throwing the ball was just it was elite. Their vertical game, his ability to escape the pocket but remain a passer. Is something that I feel like I can do pretty well, and so that for sure. But just their play action schemes, their drop back schemes, the way he would go through his reads but stay calm in the pocket, and then for last year, we share the same quarterback coach, so a lot of the same fundamentals and mechanics that Jordan teaches us, he does it, very, very elite. So I love to watch somebody who's better than me. And not that we have, I don't want to compare myself to Joe because he's, one of the best in the league, but just the way that he's doing stuff mechanically, I would love to try to be like one day.
So the Joe Burrow thing's interesting because Joe Burrow was not an immediate success in college. And that's what I find so interesting about Cade Klubnik. We've got an answer from later in that interview that where I ask him about, how much pressure is there at Clemson, where Deshaun Watson did come as a freshman and be amazing, and Trevor Lawrence was amazing as a freshman, but Cade Klubnik needed a couple of years to get where he was going. And it seems like, Joe Burrow is a pretty good example of that, because he's 3 years at Ohio State. He doesn't win the starting job. Dwayne Haskins wins it. He goes to LSU. He's a pretty good starting quarterback at LSU in 2018, but it wasn't until year 5 as a college football player that you saw the fully formed Joe Burrow. And I kind of wonder with Cade Klubnik, are we watching that sort of metamorphosis? I'm not, and I'll be like Cade here. I'm not saying he's going to be 2019 Joe Burrow, because who is? But could we see that level of year-to-year improvement?
Well, it's so funny because on this show all the time, Andy, I always tell you about my theory, which is that if you're going to be a special player, there are flashes or glimpses or at least clues, if not, outward proof that you're going to be that person very early on in your career, right? Like that happens very quickly, but there have been a few exceptions in college football of guys who are slower burns. Now, I don't know exactly what Joe Burrow, because I covered Joe Burrow when he was at Ohio State. I was a beat writer back then, and he was kind of the goofy kid that would wear like wolves on his t-shirt and kind of like joked around in the quarterback room. And if he would have told me what he would become at LSU and ultimately in the NFL, I would have kind of fell over in my chair a little bit. Also, too, though, can you study adding Justin Jefferson and Jamar Chase to your receiving corps? Because like that certainly helps. I think that like I actually feel like Joe Burrow is one of the most impressive and stark in career transformations that I've seen with my own two eyes. I think that Jalen Hurts is another one that jumps out to me. I don't even know who else you would put into that equation. But
maybe Josh Allen's metamorphosis from raw and talented Wyoming quarterback who didn't truly elevate the team because the teammates were not very good, but then got to the NFL, had some of the same struggles, and then worked his way through them.
Who went from solid with a full year of starting to absolutely unstoppable within their college career?
Jaden Daniels, kind of, but remember, Jaden Daniels had 3 years as the Arizona State starter, and if you look back, his freshman year was really good because he had better teammates than he had the other 2 years at Arizona State. But he and Joe Burrow, their LSU time was very similar, where they were both good in their first year as the LSU starter, and then all otherworldly in the second year.
Because I remember actually like thinking twice of like, yeah, Joe Burrow had one of the greatest individual seasons of all time, but what if he goes to the NFL and isn't very good because he doesn't have two of the most unstoppable receivers? They're both unstoppable in the NFL
still
right
does.
now. And he still did
Chase
it.
And T. Higgins now.
Yeah. That's just kind of how it's kind of worked out for him. But Joe Burrow is an incredible example of that. And I think that like if you are a Clemson fan who wants to go into fantasy land and think what would things look like if everything lined up perfectly and you had a 20-minute craps roll without a 7, like that's what you would be hoping for, right? Like you'd be hoping for a Joe Burrow like arrival. And the way that Dabo Swinney talked about him on our show makes you believe that he's going to have that type of offseason and that type of season. I don't know, Andy, you played the game. I never played it in college. How much a person can grow by watching film of others. I think that's a fascinating concept. I feel like think watching
it's who you study and how much DNA you share. Like he talks about having the same quarterback coach as Joe Burrow. So like when he looks at Joe, he can go and then drill that stuff, and his coach can tell him, here's what Joe does. This is how Joe works on this. This is how Joe improves this, which I think it helps too. But the Bailey Zappi thing was the one that my jaw was like, really? You studied Bailey Zappi at Western Kentucky? But let me throw you the stats from Bailey Zappi's senior year at Western Kentucky. Because remember, he was at Houston Baptist with Zach Hitley was the offensive coordinator. They transplanted OC and QB. It's sort of like Oklahoma is doing this year with Ben Arbuckle and John Mateer. So Western Kentucky grabs the OC and the QB. Zach Hitley, by the way, now the head coach at Florida Atlantic. Bailey Zappi comes in his senior year. He completes 475 of 686 passes, which is 69.2%, 5,967 yards, and 62 touchdowns. And it was interesting because when Cade said that, it reminded me of a week earlier. I'd been talking to my son's offensive line coach who played offensive line at Marshall and fairly recently. And he goes, best quarterback I ever saw in college, bar none, not even close, Bailey Zappi. He's like, that dude was surgical. And so it was funny when Cade said that. And I was like, oh, yeah, I think there's a lot of QBs who watch that 2021 Bailey Zappi. It's like one of those mixtapes that gets passed around.
Don't let what we know right now distract you from the fact that there was a month-long period where Zappi was playing in New England where people thought he was going to be the next Brady. Don't yeah, because everybody who throws the ball well for a few weeks in New England automatically gets that comparison.
Hey, we lived through the Tommy DeVito era with the Giants too, so it happens.
But it's good to know that he kind of has that mindset too, because more than anything of studying, he knows who to study to accomplish the thing that he wants to accomplish, which is to take a in career transformation from year over year over year, from solid to great. And I think part of the reason why people have been down on Clemson the last 2 years heading into the season is because they were uncertain of his ability. And I think finally you're seeing people like me, and I'm 90% sure you had them in the playoff too, right? 95% sure.
Yes. I had them winning the ACC and being top 4 seed.
And you have that thought process because you're going into a season where you're viewing their quarterback differently. He also has some better weapons too. Wesco and Bryan are really good receivers, and that's not something that they've had. Because if you remember when Deshaun Watson was playing his best game and Trevor Lawrence, I mean, they had dogs like Justin Ross. I know he didn't have much going for him in the NFL because of some injury stuff, but he was an absolute freaking dog in college.
Pre-neck injury, Justin Ross was unstoppable. And then, of course, you've got T. Higgins. And, I mean, Clemson's lineage with receivers, they're pretty, from Nuke Hopkins on, had an unbelievable run. Nuke Hopkins, Sammy Watkins, Hunter Renfrow.
Yep.
Just, and T. Higgins, Amari, it was T. Higgins' brother, Amari. Why am I blanking on his last name?
Why am I blanking on his last name? Rogers.
Yeah, Amari Rogers. But now it seems like they're having a bit of a renaissance with that, because it looked like it was a few years without that. But Antonio Williams, who was a sophomore last year, he was their leading receiver. Bryant Wesco and TJ Moore, who were both freshmen last year. Like, it feels like they are turning into that again, where they might be able to reopen the receiver factory. So I think that's going to be.
You want to hear some perspective, though, Andy?
Yeah.
When we're talking about Clemson and how high level their quarterback play has been in the past. There are 2 teams between the years 2000 and 2023, I believe, that won the national title without having signed a top 5 class in any of the previous 4 years. And it was the 2 Clemson teams with Deshaun Watson that won the national championship and the Trevor Lawrence team. And you want to know why?
Yeah.
Because they had what's that word? Generational. We have to throw that around.
Transcendent
talents, transcendent quarterback talent. And then they signed a few top 10 classes in there as well. But Clemson was the ultimate exception to the rule before the rule got thrown out the window of teams that were able to accomplish national championship-like results without recruiting like Alabama, Georgia, and Ohio State. Like you want to start talking about Trevor Lawrence and Cade Klubnik. First of all, we kind of treat and talk about Cade Klubnik like he's some 3-star upstart, like uptick guy. Like he was a 5-star dude
from Austin, and he's gotten
a lot of slack, I think, because I feel like for the most part, although he did have a really good end of last year, he has not played to the level of which his profile promised coming into college, right? Like that's a fact. And he still has to go out there and play like a dog for an entire year and actually make Clemson a team that is probably about as talented and balanced across the board at every position on both sides of the ball as anybody in college football. And I think that whether or not Clemson makes a run and lets that 20-1 ticket cash is going to fall a lot on his shoulders. And I don't think that there's anything that he can do, short of turning into the person he's been watching all summer to get into the same Watson Lawrence category. But if he gets to 80% of that, they can win the national title this year. So it's
enough. So I asked him about that, though, because we killed DJU because he couldn't be Trevor Lawrence or Deshaun Watson immediately. We killed Cade Klubnik. We were bailing on Cade Klubnik after year 2. We're like, I gotta go find somebody else. Maybe Chris Vizina is going to be the guy. He's gotten better. And I think part of, we've seen quarterbacks get better over the years. We've seen them develop. But I think because those 2 at Clemson were such immediate greats, we expected that from because Cade Klubnik was the same level of recruit as Trevor Lawrence, as Deshaun Watson. So, River, play the answer to my question about the pressure to immediately contribute at Clemson and then figuring out how you develop through that.
You mentioned another year in the system, and we see a lot of guys kind of bounce around. As a quarterback, in terms of your development, how important is that to kind of have that system knowledge and that kind of institutional knowledge that you can build on year over year as you're trying to improve yourself?
I would say it's huge. I'm so thankful that I've been at Clemson for 4 years now. It's huge just because, you've got just learning the system over and over and over. It's like installing the same thing over and over. You're just going to get better at it. The more you do it, the better you get at it, and the faster you can do it. So I've loved being with Coach Riley in that system. It's been awesome, and it's definitely been a huge blessing that Coach Swinney and Coach Riley have been there. Pretty much the whole time I've been there, and Coach Riley, just not there my freshman year, but it's been awesome. I think that I'm kind of the epitome of the word development, and why a lot of quarterbacks should, when I'm coming out of the high school, I'm wanting to go win, go to a great culture, but overall I want to leave that school better than when I got there, right? You want to go somewhere that you're going to get better and you're going to develop. And I was good my freshman year. I wasn't very good my sophomore year, but I just stuck with it. And what Clemson's done with me is develop me. They've got me better. So like if I'm a quarterback and I want to go get better, like Clemson's the place to do it. They're known for making players better, and I feel like I'm the epitome of that, of just getting better and taking a stride every year. I took a stride my sophomore and junior year. Still not where I want to be, but I'm hoping to take another step.
So that actually was Robbie Callan from CBS's question. Cade's answer was better for that one than it was to my question, but he's cutting a promo for Clemson recruiting there, but he's not wrong. Like, he is the example of the quarterback who you give a little time to and he blossoms.
Well, you do wonder too, like with the way that the sport is set up now, in terms of immediate results and how important they are, whether or not the art of development is going to be lost. Because I don't know, there's a lot of quarterbacks who come into the college realm with that expectation. I think the expectation is to get paid handsomely out of high school, to go to a place that will compensate you appropriately for your skill talent or your skill level, and then your talent will carry you through to improvement year over year so that you can increase your income. But I don't know, like when you look at five-star players moving forward, how many are going to have the same type of career arc that Cade has had at Clemson? How many schools are going to be willing to wait it out? Like, and I wonder, you listen to the way that Dabo talks about Clemson and how important development is, whether or not like Clemson is one of the few remaining programs in college football, right or wrong, where that's actually the okay thought process heading into it. Because people are changing rosters so quickly. Coaches are going to be looking to improve quicker too. Like, I think that the interesting thing about the transfer portal and NIL, Andy, that has been so talked about is that players are less patient and thus more willing to move and leave situations, even sometimes to go to worse situations in order to get instant gratification. But I also think too that there's probably been a shift in coaches' thought processes in terms of their patience with their players, because with players leaving this quickly and players available, you might not have the patience to want to develop a guy for 3 years. And if you have a chance to upgrade immediately in the portal, then you might do that too. So it's not just players leaving, but it's also coaches who have shorter leashes, have higher expectations to flip rosters quickly and are probably more quick to move on from somebody, even if they have potential to try to get the shorter route to production and thus shorter leases for the players. Because, like, listen, it all has to trickle down, right? Like, if you want to use the thing that you say, which I agree with 100% of the time, is that there is no year zero anymore, then that also plays into a part on what your players have to do from a development standpoint out of the gate in order to, if their time arc is shorter, then players' time arcs for developments are shorter. Like, right? Like, that's,
yeah.
And Dabo's not in a position that he has to do that.
I wonder if Dabo has just a good gut on this, because he did move on from Kelly Bryant at the right time. He moved on from DJ Uiagalelei to move to Cade Klubnik. He stuck with Cade Klubnik, though. He didn't move on from him even when he struggled. So maybe he's got a good gut instinct about this, about, that Klubnik had more to him. And we saw more to Klubnik's game last year. And of course, I had to ask him about Crazy Legs Klubnik.
Yeah. I have been critical of Dabo Swinney quite a bit the last few years. Like, Dabo is the most confusing person in the world, because I think he would be on my Mount Rushmore of modern day coaches, but also has driven me crazy with his inability, or he took his time to adapt, I think. But at the same time too, there's one thing that you can unequivocally not say about Dabo Swinney, and that is that he's not a good evaluator. I think that Dabo Swinney and his staff has been the leading charge of what peak evaluation looks like from top to bottom. And I wonder, a lot of times too with me, like I'm an eye roller with coach speak. And that Dabo Swinney has, he listened to our show. He heard of
the elevated coach speak
to
a different language.
He's got a line for everything. But I do actually wonder if Dabo is hitting the nail on the head in the sense of we are recruiting people who fit Clemson. And I know a lot of people say that, but Dabo actually embodies that in a way that others don't.
Yeah, I think he means it in a way that other coaches think they mean it, but don't really. They don't practice it.
Really means it. And I wonder if there's going to be a 180 when it comes to how to build a roster. And it's like everybody's going to be transient and you're going to have 17 new players starting for you every other year. Yeah. And like, I wonder if Clemson might not be a national title contender year over year, but once every 4 years come out with a team like they're bringing in this year, in a world where that is more appropriate, where nobody is a national championship contender year over year. Like, I wonder if like Clemson is going to take the long route back to the top in a way that is different. Does that make sense? Like,
it does. It makes perfect sense. And look, Cade Klubnik adding a dimension to his game last year, the running part that we talked to Dabo Swinney about. Here's what Klubnik said about that and his ability to just suddenly rip off these long runs.
Do you feel like some of the runs, especially the one in the Pitt game, like your speed rating should be way up there, right?
We'll see. I just got to go check it out. I don't know if I'm allowed to say, but it was about 3 points higher than I thought it was going to be. So
those are not final, by the way.
Okay.
Spoiler alert.
Never mind then. Maybe they can get it up a little more. I don't know. I was happy with it though.
I was talking to Dabo a few weeks ago, and he said that it felt like you got so much more comfortable running the ball last year. What changed?
I think just being able to get through my reads faster. Honestly, just being in the system another year. It's not a guessing game. It wasn't a guessing game as much last year in terms of just how I was getting through my stuff. So, escaping when I need to and not whenever I'm, not run from ghosts is kind of a term that we say is when I'm sitting back in their pocket and, I've got time back there and sometimes I'll just run too early. I got a great pocket. So being able to do that, but then when I am trusting my legs, just knowing scenarios, 2nd and 10, don't have to go throw a 15-yard out route. Go get 6, 7, 8 yards and get ourselves in a good spot for third down is just putting drives together and keeping them alive, and also using them on third downs and stuff is definitely big.
When it winds up being 65 yards, though, does it surprise you, or do you know it's in there?
Yeah, I haven't had many of those, and I had 2 or 3 last year, so those were pretty fun. Sometimes they surprise me; it just kind of happens, but it's definitely not because of myself. It's everybody kind of working together. So,
you know what I hear from him, Ari, is somebody who understands the offense, who understands the assignment, who. And he's being pretty critical of his prior self because he's basically saying, I didn't quite understand these situations before, and now I am very situationally aware. That I would assume comes from experience, but also from study and everything else.
Yeah, and those types of process-related decisions aren't going to be on SportsCenter's top 10 plays, and they're not going to be something that the naked eye would even kind of comprehend, but
unless he goes for 80 yards, like in the pick.
No, right. But I feel like the quarterbacks that turn 3rd and 10 into 3rd and 4 with regularity are the ones that coaches are obsessed with and the ones that win a lot of games.
Well, you know who the best in college football was at that in the last 10 years is Jaden Daniels, the year he won the Heisman. He was incredible. Like, he turned so many 3rd and 9s into another first down, even when the pocket broke down. It was insane.
Yeah. But being smart enough to know that instead of throwing a 30% ball on 2nd and 10, when you can check down or extend a play with your legs to get 5 yards, taking what the defense gives you, not trying to be too greedy, trying to hit spots that, aren't going to hit because you're desperate. Like, playing within yourself, playing in control, and playing process-oriented football is something that might not lead to exciting television, but sometimes it is. Sometimes avoiding a sack and running for 4 yards is an exciting play. But, I think that if there's somebody in the flat that you can dump the ball down to who has an easy 5 yards, or you have a timing route to the outside on 2nd and 10, that has a 20% chance of completion, that doing the right thing and taking the yardage that's there for yourself gives you a higher likelihood, obviously, of converting that third down and keeping your offense on the field, which then opens the door for Sports Center type plays and more touchdowns for sure.
He sounds so confident right now, and I don't know that he sounded like that in previous years. So I think I'm really excited to see what Cade Klubnik does this year. Just like we were talking about Ryan Williams on yesterday's show, like the growth is obvious. And Ryan Williams obviously had a phenomenal freshman year, but I think he can build on that. Cade Klubnik had a really good year last year, but if he could take another leap similar to the one he took before last year, you're talking about a very good team.
Yep. Yeah, and I'm excited to watch Clemson. Listen, I put money where my mouth was. I think that they're basically a lock to make the playoff this year, even if they were to lose the opener. And
which, by the way,
from there, who knows?
Incredible quarterback matchup in the opener. Cade Klubnik versus Garrett Nussmeier, two of the best in the country. Like that is going to be amazing to watch. That Saturday night, August 30th.
You remember when people freaked out when I did my most exciting non-conference games and I put Ohio State, Texas 2 and this number 1?
This one could be, because we don't know what Ohio State, Texas is going to be. This LSU Clemson game is going to be so much fun.
I just don't know what answers you're going to get out of the Ohio State, Texas game. I think you're going to get some answers out of that LSU.
How's Arch, I guess?
I mean, that's stupid. It's Arch Manning. I get it. And Ohio State's debuting a quarterback too, but I feel like we're probably pretty certain that both of those teams are playoff teams next year. And it'll be a great game. I'm not trying. It's number 2. But in terms of like the Brian Kelly, Cade Klubnik, Dabo Swinney, Garrett Nussmeier, like there is like 5 storylines there of like, hey, is Clemson going to finally do what, we punted on thinking they could do? Is LSU going to finally win an opener and put themselves in a position to be viewed as a top 5 team, which is something that is pushed back a lot, Andy? You have a lot of revelatory. It's like if Ohio State loses to Texas 31-27, like I don't know how much you learn from that, other than 2 really good teams.
Because they could both be really good. Like they could see each other again. Yeah, if LSU goes into Clemson and stomps them, or Clemson stomps LSU, like we're making some assumptions at that point.
The one thing that the LSU Clemson game has that the Ohio State Texas game does not is coaching storylines.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
and I like coaching storylines. To me, are the juiciest. Like, is Arch Manning going to be good? We've talked a lot about that this offseason. I think he's going to be good. But even if he has a average game against Ohio State, like Ohio State does that, and if Julian Sand has an average game against Texas, a team that has maybe 4 first-round draft picks starting on it this year, then okay, well, that's going to happen if that's your first game starting ever. Like for me, it's like Brian Kelly is such an interesting just talking point. Like I know that he's too expensive to fire after next year, but like still, LSU has not been LSU in a 5-year period, and that's not good enough there. And Dabo Swinney is doing things his own way unapologetically. And we were questioning whether that was good enough to win a national championship ever again. And I think the system has reverted back to a place where Clemson doesn't have to be 2017, 16, 18 Clemson in order to do it. Mm-hmm. Can they hang on the same field as a team like LSU that did really well in the I don't have to explain it to you guys. You guys all know if you're listening. But that's going to be a hell of a story to watch that day.
It's going to be amazing. And who knows? Probably matchups of future college football Hall of Famers on that first day of the season. Speaking of the College Football Hall of Fame, so the National Football Foundation released the list of names, the people who are eligible to be selected for the next year's class in the College Football Hall of Fame. We talked about, this hopefully Mike Leach is eligible now because they changed the coaching requirements and made it where it's a little bit different. And so, perhaps he's got a shot now, but there are a lot of players that are on this list, and it is it's pretty amazing and pretty hard because I looked at the list last year. I think there were 16 players from the the FBS / Division 1A level that they selected. And so I went through this list and tried to narrow it down to like 16. And it is brutal. It is brutal because there's so many good players that wind up not there. So let me just read. I'm going to read you the names of the players, and it's a lot of names. And be aware that you would have to cut a lot of these names out. So Flozell the Motel Adams from Michigan State, the offensive line, Morton Anderson, Eric Anderson, Brad Banks, the Iowa quarterback, Kenyon Barner, the Oregon running back, Freddie Barnes from Bowling Green, Aaron Beasley from West Virginia, Bernard Berrien from Fresno State, Eric Bieniemy, who was an incredible running back at Colorado, Jeff Bregel, USC offensive lineman, Alex Brown, one of the single greatest games ever, the 99 Tennessee game, Florida defensive end, Courtney Brown from Penn State, Des Bryant from Oklahoma State, Rocky Kalmus from Oklahoma, Mark Carrier, Kajana Carter from Penn State, Russell Carter, Matt Kavanaugh, Dallas Clark, Randall Cobb, Marco Coleman. I'm only in the C's, Ari. Can I give you my locks? Can I give my locks that I think have to make it in this class? You ready?
Yeah, there's one that's definitely like it's Cam Newton, right? Like that's
one. Cam Newton.
Okay. Yeah.
Cam Newton for sure. Most dominant single season by any college player ever. Dragged the Auburn team in 2010 to an undefeated season and a national title. I don't think I've ever seen a more dominant quarterback performance in a single season in college football. Cam Newton for sure. Aaron Donald is on the list.
Yeah.
Let me read you the stat line from one game in Aaron Donald's final year at Pittsburgh. So they played against Georgia Tech on November 2nd, 2013. They actually lost this game. Not Aaron Donald's fault. He had 11 solo tackles. 6 of those were tackles for loss. He forced 2 fumbles, and he had a sack. All right, Georgia Tech ran the triple option. The triple option is designed to never have a negative play. How any single human being had 6 tackles for loss against a triple option team is mind-blowing. Mind-blowing. So everything you saw from Aaron Donald in the NFL, he was even more dominant at Pitt. Go back and watch the YouTube.
How many people are they taking?
They're probably going to take 15 or so, 16 or so from this long list.
This is insane because you're going to have to. I mean, I think other locks. Do you have other locks?
Ndamukong Suh?
That's one of my locks.
Again, we're talking about most dominant performances for an entire season, and obviously, Ndamukong Suh had multiple great seasons. Like 2007, 2008 were great seasons. 2009 is the greatest season an interior defensive lineman other than Aaron Donald has ever had, and maybe better than anything Aaron Donald did too. He led Nebraska in tackles. If you watch the 2009 Big 12 championship game, single-handedly dismantled an offense of a team that played for the national title that year, that was undefeated otherwise.
He was just scary. It's like the stats too. It's just like, okay, go read all the stats and stuff, but it's just like he was scary.
There was a Thursday night game where they played Missouri in the rain. He twisted Blaine Gabbert into a pretzel. Blaine Gabbert is a huge person and a good athlete. And Ndamukong Suh made him look like a small child.
Yeah. And obviously both of those guys went on to be pretty dominant NFL defensive tackles. You want another one?
Yeah.
That I think's a lock? There's some tough ones.
I know. Is it somebody who went to my alma mater? Because
it's not. That's not who I was going to say. But there's certainly, depending
who are you going to
that
say?
Is. I was going to say Peter Warwick.
Oh, yeah.
Like, I don't know when you talk about, because like also too, like, didn't they win the national title and he was the MVP of the national title game that year? Like he was
the best player on the field that season. And I remember Peter Warwick in 1996 as a freshman was just nasty. Like standing on the field at Doak Campbell Stadium during the Florida State game, like standing on the floor sideline watching Peter Warwick, like he was unstoppable or felt unstoppable. And 99 was when he was at his absolute peak.
But Andy, he did go to your alma mater. The other one.
He didn't. But he did a lot of the same things as the guy I'm going to talk about.
Yeah, Percy Harvin's the one that you're getting at, right? Because Percy Harvin.
That's exactly right.
Yeah, I know. Trust me, guys. Please don't. I know Peter Warwick went to Florida State. That's not what I was saying. I was transitioning to Percy Harvin, who I think you can make the case as one of the greatest college football players of all time in general.
Yes, I would agree with that. I think if you polled the players who were on the 2006 and 2008 national title teams at Florida and said, who is the most special person on the roster, every single one of them will say Percy Harvin. And we're talking about rosters that had Tim Tebow, that had Brandon Spikes, that had the Pouncey twins. Like, there were some great players on those teams. But I guarantee you, like, I don't think I'm speaking out of school here. I think we could bring Tim Tebow on and be like, who's the most special player? Percy. We bring Brandon Spikes in here. Who's the most special player? Percy. This he was just a different human being. And it's interesting that we went from talking about Peter Warrick to talking about Percy, because Peter Warrick, very similar kind of player. But Percy was kind of the perfect version of all of that. Like, I will never forget, because I was on a beat writer when he was a freshman. And so we got to watch practice early in the season back then, in the preseason. The first time he touches the ball, you're just like, I've never seen anything like that. I've never seen anything like that.
I mean, the entire season was just one Sports Center highlight of him running up the sideline, like, untouched, because people couldn't get anywhere near him. Like, it was like every single time. And, like, listen, Andy, I don't know, you covered it, right? You were there firsthand, but, you know, I covered his coach who left the program, Florida, and then ended up at another one and for 3 or 4 years into the beat, when Urban got to Ohio State, every single receiver that Ohio State would either sign or be recruiting, the question in the press conference was, is he going to be your Percy? Is he going to be your Percy? And Urban was at one point just was like, no one's going to be Percy, guys. Like, I don't know how many times I tell you, there's no other Percy Harvin. But you want to know the player that Urban Meyer was obsessed with and wanted to be like Percy, although I don't know that he ever played anything like Percy Harvin, was right when he took the Ohio State job. Urban Meyer was absolutely obsessed with Stephon Diggs and trying to rip him away from Maryland. And that didn't happen. And Stephon Diggs obviously went on to do some pretty incredible things.
And Stephon actually, I mean, better NFL career than Percy had, but not the same thing.
They're not the same type of player, but I feel like they kept trying to find the track meet guy who you could do the shovel pass to, or the quick pitch, who would be able to make someone miss, turn it upfield, and run for 80 yards. And like, there's nobody else that could do it like that.
The play in the SEC championship game, Percy's freshman year, 2006, against Arkansas, where they just handed him the ball, because by the end of that season, they'd gotten tired of trying to figure out how to force feed him in the pass game, and so late in the season, they just started handing it to him, and he was the best running back in the country when they handed him the ball. Like, it was crazy. So it's weird, because with these, it's hard because sometimes their NFL career didn't match. Like, Dez Bryant's on this list. Like, I think Dez Bryant is probably a college football Hall of Famer, even though he burned out in the NFL.
I mean, and Dez Bryant had a really good NFL career. It didn't go as long as it probably could have, but he still was pretty dominant when he was on the field in the NFL too, right?
Yeah. Yeah. No, he was good in the NFL. He was very good in the NFL too. But I got
another one for you.
Okay.
Kind of off another one, because like, we know Percy Harvin's good. But like, let me ask you this, in terms of like, and maybe it's just because this was more my like, there aren't a lot of players on this list that were playing when I was working. A lot of people from my childhood, but like the one that stood out to me was Manti Te'o, and I was wondering what your thoughts were on that.
I think he's definitely a college football Hall of Famer. Helped bring Notre Dame back. I mean, I remember covering his recruitment and how big of a deal it was for Notre Dame to get him, and they needed that at the time. I mean, this was the tail end of the Charlie Weiss era, where they didn't have a lot of juice on the recruiting trail, and getting Manti was a big deal. And then he became a very good college player. Now, the catfishing thing is always going to follow him. Now, I think he's done a good job of distancing himself from it and kind of moving on with his life. Like, he's on Good Morning Football now. We see him every day on TV, but that's always going to be part of the story. But I don't think it should overshadow how good he was as a college football player.
Well, the thing that I think is interesting about this discussion, and maybe this will bleed over to when we get to the coaches side of things, Andy, is the discussion that we kind of had at the end of Monday's show, which was, should there be a win percentage or a stat threshold that somebody has to reach in order to be considered? And, you know, I don't know, because I'm not an expert and was very young when some of these guys were playing. You know, some of them played before I was born. But how many of these players commanded the attention and the story the way that Manti did that year? And I know part of that was the catfishing thing, but the catfishing thing didn't really come to light till the end of the year, and he was still the story of the
season was
and
over.
And I know, and I know that you can't stand my thought process when it comes to voting for the Heisman, and maybe I'll relax it a little bit as a result of you influencing me. But when you think about Hall of Famers too, how much of the story, how much of the pulse, how much of the attention do you feel like matters in this, or is it just how good were you?
I don't think it's necessarily the story. I just think he was really important to Notre Dame in that period and helping Notre Dame become a nationally prominent program again.
But I just don't think that you could measure Manti Te'o's presence by looking at his stats. That's the point I'm making. And his presence made Notre Dame relevant for the first time in a very long time, in a way that other guys on this list couldn't even come close to. And some were very good, and some were just like, you got Lyman on here that people just, they know we're good, but you don't have any moments of remembering. Like,
I got a moment. There's one on here that needs to be in.
Alan Faneca?
That's the one. I think I've told the story before of when I had to play him on scout team as a freshman.
No, you didn't.
He's a freak. So LSU week, my freshman year, one of the GAs comes down and says, I need you to come up before practice. I need you to look at this. And he's showing me video of number 66 for LSU. And he's like, okay, this is who you're going to be playing this week. And I'm watching this guy and I'm like, how in the world am I going to do this? This person is a superhuman. Like, Alan Faneca was so freaking fast. And if I'm getting too far into the weeds, I'm sorry. Here's what they had Alan Faneca do. Alan Faneca could be playing left guard. You could have a sweep going to the right, like a toss sweep. So going very wide to the right. Alan Faneca's job would be to hit the play side linebacker, who was already closer to the running back than he was, and probably as fast as the running back. So in my case, it was Mike Peterson at Florida, who wound up playing like 11 years in the NFL. Currently is on Florida staff. Mike Peterson was one of the fastest outside linebackers I ever saw. And so, like, what I had to do as Alan Faneca was I had to pull around the right side, get out ahead of whoever they had playing Kevin Falk. I can't remember who was playing Kevin Falk that week. And then hit Mike Peterson before he could hit the running back. And it's not possible. It's impossible. But like on the film, Alan Faneca is doing it every play. And I was like, how is this person even mortal? Like this can't exist. He's 300 pounds.
Yeah, the scout player.
Now we know he's an NFL Hall of Famer too. So
the thing that I've always been amused by, and it's just something that if you cover a team, you hear like, so who's playing so and so on the scout team? Like it's like a storyline, and it's like, why are you having the players who aren't good enough to have a scholarship try to duplicate what the best player on the other team is doing?
Exactly. Actually, that same week, I had that same conversation in my head while Bob Stoops was yelling at me. So Bob Stoops is the defensive coordinator. I'm messing up his drill repeatedly because I can't be Alan Faneca. And so that play I'm telling you about, that toss sweep to the right, which was the bane of my existence for a week. He's like, since you are so slow, we're going to let you get back out of your stance and stand in a sprinter stance behind the line of scrimmage.
Yeah.
And what I wanted to say the whole time was, dude, if I could do this, I wouldn't be on this field with you. I'd be on the other field with the starters. I told Bob Stoops that story. He laughed.
Yeah, it is kind of funny because it's just like, like if I was able to do this, then I would be on scholarship and playing.
Yes.
So,
and like, I don't know why they picked me. I think it was just dumb. I think they realized they made a huge mistake because there were freshman scholarship offensive linemen or redshirt freshman scholarship offensive linemen who were down on scout team who they could have used and they should have used because those guys actually wound up playing in later years and were good players. So they just messed up.
Yeah,
but
the thing that
I learned a valuable lesson. What a Hall of Fame NFL offensive lineman looks like at an early stage. And the fact that Alan Faneca is already in the NFL Hall of Fame and is not in the College Football Hall of Fame yet is a crime.
You want to know another one that is interesting to me?
Yep.
Ryan Leaf.
It's a great one. We need to have him on the show. Have you ever talked to Ryan?
Do you know that when I went to Cabo with my wife in February for her brother's 40th birthday, that one of the other friends that was there celebrating, and one of my wife's brother's closest friends is Brady Leaf, Ryan's brother.
Okay.
So I've never talked to Ryan, but I talked to Brady while hammered in a pool for 3 straight days.
Ryan is an incredible guy, like very upfront and honest about everything that's happened in his life. It's part of his recovery to be honest about it. I worked with him a lot at SiriusXM, and he's just an interesting guy to talk to because he will get into all that stuff about the draft and what happened after he got to the Chargers, and it's fascinating. And he owns all of it now.
Tell me if I'm talking out of school here, but he got addicted to pain pills that were prescribed to him to play football, right? Like, isn't that how that started?
That it started that way, and then it spiraled out of control.
But his first taste of the opioid came from a football-related medicine,
right? Yeah.
Yeah.
And now, if we want to talk about Ryan Leaf as a college football player, he was a phenomenal quarterback at Washington State. So certainly, belongs on this list. I don't know if you put him in because it's hard. Like with just the quarterbacks alone on this list, they're all really good. Brad Banks was pretty awesome at Iowa. Kellen Moore was unbelievable at Boise State. Jordan Lynch was incredible at Northern Illinois. Ken Dorsey, RG3 is on this list too. So
yeah, but there's a lot of players too that were really, 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 really good, who don't have the star power, but were probably as good at playing that. Like, listen, you know who's not going to get in probably, but probably should? Antoine Randall. I mean, that guy, you want to talk about a Swiss Army knife? Yeah, he's somebody that I would put on there. I'm trying to think. Terrence Newman from K-State, another player that was insanely good in college.
Can I give you another guy on this list who I think should definitely be in, but obviously, given his age, has not gotten in a bunch of tries?
Who's that?
Sebastian Janikowski.
Oh, yeah.
Sebastian Janikowski was incredible. So, got a story about him, too. My buddy from high school says, hey, if you ever get a chance, you need to come watch my club soccer team play. I was like, why? He's like, we got this dude from Poland. It was Sebastian Janikowski. And so, he's like a center midfielder in soccer in high school. And just towering over. He looked like a man among boys, and he would just maul everyone down the field and then send this rocket shot into the goal. And then you see him kicking for Florida State, and it literally every time he kicks the ball, it sounds like a bomb is going off.
That's so funny.
Just amazing.
Oh yeah, there's just too many people on this list, and that's hard. I don't know this. I'm sure you do. Who votes for this?
So it's the members of the National Football Foundation. I believe Football Writers Association of America members are allowed to vote as well. So it's a pretty big group. It's people who care a lot about the game, and I think they take it very seriously. Let's talk about the coaches. So they actually didn't nominate Mike Leach, even though they did alter the criteria to allow him to be nominated. So hopefully he'll be on the list next year. But I got 3 coaches on this list that I think are 2 are definite no-brainers. 1 I think should be Chris Peterson, Boise State and Washington. Yeah. Gary Patterson, TCU. I don't think there's any question those 2 should get in right now. And then the
Gary's
other one
locked in on this too. Gary's like, yeah, like listen, everyone. He's well aware. I bet
he's right though.
I know he is.
He was amazing for a long time. Like,
who's the third?
Okay, let me ask you this, because we talked about Dabo as an evaluator earlier. Has there ever been a better evaluator in the history of college football than Gary Patterson?
Probably not.
Who could go look at a high school running back and be like, that's an NFL defensive end.
Right. And also, too, like leveling the playing field. The original person who went from, smaller time school that isn't competing at a high level to being really, really, really good. Like the epitome of what they were in 14, like that. Not a lot of coaches could have built that there.
Yeah. Yeah. The other one who isn't necessarily a no-brainer, who I would say they should put in, is Ralph Regent at Maryland, because that's such a hard job. Yeah. And he was amazing. He won the ACC at Maryland. Come on.
Yeah.
That's really difficult.
It's funny how you can use the context of today's game to try to, contextualize like how hard of a job it is and whether or not that's the same thing. But yeah, Maryland seems impossible. There are a lot of people on this list that are just guys that coach at small time places that I'm not even really all that well aware of. Like from 1948 to 67. Like I don't even know who that person is.
I'll give you one from the FCS ranks is Rod Broadway. He was the defensive line coach at Florida when I was playing. And so I just enjoyed listening to him argue with the offensive line coach during one-on-one pass pro, but he turned into an excellent head coach at several different HBCUs because he worked at North Carolina Central, he worked at Grambling and at North Carolina A&T, had a really good career there, and wound up being a guy who inspired a lot of younger coaches to get into the business. And so that's one I would say, just a helpful suggestion if you want to throw another coach on there. That would be one to think about.
Is there a total number of people, or is it split from X number of players, X number of coaches have to
it seems like there's a threshold that you have to hit in terms of votes. And so it can be more, it can be less. Last year, I believe it was 16 of the FBS 1A. And then there are a couple players from the FCS Division II, Division III ranks. And then there were 4 coaches last year. Now, Nick Saban and Urban Meyer were among the 4 coaches last year. So easy no-brainers there.
Yeah. Is Nick Saban a lock to get in, do you think?
He's in. He got in last year.
No, I know. I'm making a joke. He's the greatest. He should be in Hall of Fames for fields that aren't even football. He was that good. He should be in the automotive
Hall of Fame. Like Nick Saban.
To be in the all-time best automotive designer Hall of Fame. That guy was so good. Like him and Frank Sinatra should be in every Hall of Fame.
I like that. Oh, producer River points out on this list, by the way, of players, Mark Ingram.
Yeah.
And the problem is there's a lot of these guys. You're like, oh, this is a lot. Deshaun Jackson
is another, like there was I don't want to know if you want to go right back to this, but there are players on this list that were truly unbelievably incredible that will get overshadowed by guys who were bigger names. Like Brad Banks at Iowa is one. I think that
Antoine Randall L
will be on that list.
James Laurinaitis.
Yeah. What about Kajana Carter? He's Dallas Clark, the tight end from Iowa. Randall Cobb.
Randall Cobb was a dog at Kentucky.
Vernon Davis.
How about Simeon Rice and Kevin Hardy from Illinois?
And what
at
about
the same time?
Ferguson, offensive tackle from
Virginia?
Like no one's gonna, everybody loved his name when the Jets drafted him, but I hope there's appreciation for how good he was in college. I don't know who else was on here that
This is so freaking hard.
You know who's on here? Marvin Harrison,
senior.
Yeah. Although Junior probably should already be in too, but like we'll talk about that in 10 years.
Junior's getting in too. Let's be real here.
Father-son Hall of Fame duos. But yeah, no, that's a great list. And I think that like too, on this show, we talk so much about the future, and I think people are more interested in the future, but I do have an appreciation of when we can look back into the past a little bit and kind of highlight some people that deserve their shine. And I think we did a pretty good job of that today.
I think we did too. Speaking of people who deserve their shine, we've got some listeners / viewers who helped us with a question that we asked on yesterday's show. And I want to read some of the answers because I think it's really educational.
We'll do the prompt first. The prompt. If you didn't listen to yesterday's show, we talked specifically to people and fans of teams that aren't necessarily realistic national championship contenders at the highest level, and whether or not they would be as fulfilled and excited about their teams if they went down to a level and were more competitive in that level. And here's what we got.
Yeah, I think that would be, it's a good question. I thought I knew what the answer would be, and I'd say that the people who responded answered in the way I thought they might. So here's Adam. Adam's a Liberty fan, and this was in the chat from Monday's show. As a Liberty alum, I've seen fan interest go up after we went from FCS to FBS. Yes, we don't have a chance at the national title right now, but we can and have beaten Virginia Tech, Baylor, Arkansas, and BYU. Alumni from around the country now care about Liberty football because we play more recognizable schools instead of VMI, Gardner-Webb, etc. For programs like these, making the Fiesta Bowl equals winning the national title, which I think is a perfectly fair one. Now, I got another response from a Mississippi State fan. It's Dear Old State on Twitter. Mississippi State fan here. Take the check, take the loss. Like, that's from the SEC. So, because like Mississippi State funded at the level it's funded now, you put them in a different league, they might be winning that league. But no, they want to be in the SEC. They want to be part of that.
Take the check, take the loss means we're just happy to be in the SEC. It doesn't matter what happens. Is that what that means?
Yeah. We're big time here. And so when they have a moment, and this is kind of piggybacking off Adam's answer, when they have a moment like 2014, when they ascend to number one in the poll, and they're number one in the first college football playoff rankings, which came out in late October, early November, like that's a massive deal for them. That's a historic moment in their program. Sure, Alabama doesn't care about that because Alabama's been number one in that a million times. But at Mississippi State, it means something. And
that 1 year and that moment equates to a decade's worth of dominance at a lower level, probably.
Correct. All right, so this is from Caden, who's a Boise State fan. Love your show today. I'm a diehard Boise State fan. I just want a shot. Frustrating as a Boise State fan that we can't be invited to a bigger conference with more funding. Boise State has been better than 60% of the Power Five this century. And he says if the SEC and Big Ten truly cared about the best teams, there would be relegation. It'd be hard to convince me that Boise State, with the SEC and Big Ten funding, couldn't get to the top level. Hope to see you guys in South Bend. Mexican food on me. So
who do you think, though?
You
and thanks so much for writing in, guys. Who do you think's more worthy of being in the Big Ten, Purdue or Boise?
Boise tries harder.
Wouldn't it be crazy if like how hard you tried like was the exact litmus test necessary to? Because like the ones who try the hardest and care the most should probably be the schools that are rewarded the most with money, which then would in turn to invest it back into the program and then reach heights that they probably can't.
Alabama cares the most and has the money, and then what you get is what you see.
I mean, this would be a good show
for Ohio State. Yeah,
it would be a good show to like here are the 10 programs that care the most, but caring enough isn't going to be enough to overcome the financial deficit that they face every year. And like Boise's the headliner of that list, right?
Yep. I really like the way that these folks have answered this question. It helps
Liberty's
me
probably on that
understand
list too. Liberty's on that list too, right?
Yes, Liberty's absolutely on that list.
But like Liberty, say what you want about them, like their number one goal is to be good at football. Like that's really important to them. It's like that's
Appalachian State. We've heard from Appalachian State fans, and Appalachian State was dominant at the FCS level, like winning multiple national titles, and their fans seem to enjoy what they're doing now as much or more.
Yeah. And I know that's only 3 people. I don't know. We're not going to speak for the entire, but I do think that, like, for the most part, being a part of the system and having a chance at a hope of knocking off a team for 1 week or reaching the top of the polls and, the CFP reveal in October and all the different things that some of these schools, because, like, listen, I think that for the most part, if you go down the list of schools, like, they've all had their moments, like, I don't know that there's been a team that's just been crappy for 30 years every year and never had a moment. Mississippi State has their moment. Purdue's had their moment when they beat the crap out of Ohio State in 2016. They had their Drew Brees years. I mean, everybody has had a blip, right? Arizona made the Fiesta Bowl not too long ago. Arizona State was a team that went 25 years without being very good, and then all of a sudden is neck and neck with Texas in a playoff game, winning the Big 12. Like, there aren't a lot of teams that have just been bad and only bad, right? Like, that's another piece of context that's important too.
Yeah. And a lot of it, like, it's teams like Appalachian State and Liberty that were good at the lower level, and then
I mean, look, like Illinois,
good. James Madison. We're watching it with James Madison now too.
Yeah. I mean, Illinois is coming into the year as a top 10 team in some people's polls. They're having a moment right now. Like everybody, cycles through and has a moment. Like I think you and I have both been vehemently against the entire Super League idea, and this is the reason for it. So we want people to vote, to have hope. We want them to be engaged, and I do like the art of the upset too. Like there's no game in the NFL that happens where your face melts off by the result, is there? Like even if the Browns beat the Patriots 1 week, it's like, is that a big deal? That's why Survivor Leagues are so hard to win, because the worst team beats the best team all the time.
Yeah, it's part of what makes college football special. And it's the same reason that you and I have both said we don't want a Super League. We don't want them cutting down to the 32 biggest or the 48 biggest or whatever. I like the fact that it's a broad spectrum. I like the fact that the Big 12 games. And look, the bigger playoff makes this happen. The smaller playoff didn't really do this, but the bigger playoff, like the Big 12 games, affect what happens to the bracket and affect what happens in the Big 10 and in the SEC and in the ACC. And I love that. I love that I can flip on I'm so excited about some of these Big 12 regular season games that we've talked about where we flip our 3.5 coin, like sitting down on a Friday night and watching that as the appetizer to the weekend. I mean, come on.
Are excited for Auburn Baylor.
Yes.
That game does not exist in the Super League team era.
Exactly. And
what if Baylor wins, guys? By the way, could happen, will happen. Maybe.
Certainly could happen.
Pretty high on Auburn. Could happen.
Sawyer Robertson's a hell of a quarterback, though. So, yeah.
Look at the top. Let's real quick, Andy. I know we're trying to wrap this up.
Yeah.
I'm trying to add up how many teams on this list are. These are the top 10 non-conference games on the screen for those listening. So there's 20 total teams. There's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 teams out of the 20 that would not be included in the Super League, probably, right? Am I adding that right? Baylor,
well, you're saying North Carolina and Miami wouldn't. I think they probably would.
No.
There's less than 20 teams because you have
no.
Baylor and Duke.
Baylor, Duke.
TCU,
North Carolina. You're right. It's probably 3.
North Carolina's probably in it.
North Carolina's in it. Miami's in it, and Illinois by association is in it.
Clemson's going to be in it if it happens. Yeah.
Okay.
Florida State's probably going to be in it.
Even if it's 3 out of 20, that's 15%.
Yeah. No, exactly. I'm with you. Keep it broad. Liberty, Appalachian State, Boise State, all the ones we just talked about. Boise State, by the way, among the teams that are going to the new Pac, I guess they're going to call it the Pac 8 when it debuts with 8 teams. But they have, as of Monday night, said as of Sunday night, they said they're out of the Mountain West in 2026.
Who's in the Pac 8 now? Don't mean to put you on the spot.
Well, now I got to come up with the list. Well, it's Washington State, Oregon State, Boise State, San Diego State.
I just wanted to make sure that Oregon State and Washington State were in it. They're the main fixture.
Well, they founded it, basically.
Yeah. Okay, well, let them rise again. You don't have to go look up everything. I just thought it was interesting thought.
Colorado State, Utah State, San Diego State, Boise State.
The Pac 8 will rise again.
It's going to be. I think it's going to wind up being 8. We're not sure. They haven't finalized everything yet, but
just go get Ohio State and really put a wrench in this whole thing. Go get Alabama.
Yeah, but they have the schools that are leaving the Mountain West. So that would be Boise State, Fresno State, Colorado State, Utah State, San Diego State have given their notice. They are out as of Sunday night. They've given their notice to be out in the summer of 2026. So this is their final year in the Mountain West.
Okay, well, I'll let you do the episode on that by yourself because that's like what happens in the Mountain West now. I don't even know what the hell's going on here.
They've already backfilled, Ari.
So here's the thing I will say on the way out of here, Andy. As a beat writer, I got asked the question, what conference would you want to cover the most? And I said Mountain West. Just because the road trips would have been incredible.
Oh, yeah. Well, I mean,
beautiful conference in America.
And there's still going to be, because they're still going to have Laramie, Wyoming. You're still going to get to go to Reno.
I love Reno.
You get to go to El Paso. You get to go to Hawaii.
Big bubble craps guy.
Albuquerque.
Those people who sit in front of the craps machines that were the thing that dice just boom, boom.
Oh, yeah, it pops.
That's me. I legitimately could sit there for 24 hours straight without peeing. Like I'm just locked in on that. I want to go play tomorrow night with my brother. I'll see you at the Talking Stick tomorrow night around midnight.
Maybe Charles Barkley will be there. The only time I've ever been there, he was there. So
yeah. Well, thanks so much, man. That was fun. Good show.
That was fun. All right. We got even more for my trip to Orlando. On tomorrow's show, Ben Howmiller, the principal designer of EA College Football 26, joins the show. He's a fun one. We actually went to high school 15 miles apart at the same time. Both learned that we were not Division I offensive tackles at about the same time as well. So Ben will join us, and you're not going to find a bigger college football fan than him. And you realize that the game is in very good hands. So we'll talk to you tomorrow.